3 reasons to say yes. Many times we get asked to do something, and now if you're like me, that one of my biggest setbacks is being a people pleaser. I always want to say yes. When someone asks something of me, someone wants me to do something, my first knee-jerk reaction is to say yes, sure, I'll be there, you can count on me, that sounds great, that sounds wonderful. And so what I've had to do over the years is learn to give myself a little bit of a cushion and say, well, instead of saying yes right away, I tell people, let me get back to you. That way I can thoroughly examine, I can see if it's a true yes or not, because the worst thing you want to do is to say yes to someone, to give a promise, and then you have to go back and backtrack and say, look, I know I said yes, but something came up. I'm going to have to do this instead. I'm sorry, I won't be able to do it. And so to prevent myself from always having to back out of things that I already said yes to, I came up with a list of things that I can do. Now, first step, like I said, is you ask for more time. Say, hey, let me get back to you on this before I say yes, and I will let you know. I have to check my calendar. I have to talk to my wife. I have to check, on this and that, and just make sure that I'm available to follow through on this thing. And so that's the first thing. But then you want to ask some questions to yourself. Now, here's the thing. In the scriptures, to give you a Bible reference for this, in Matthew 5:37, Jesus was teaching them. He says, let your yes be yes, and your no be no. And the reason he was teaching that is, if you look back, many of them, they were making oaths, and they were swearing. They were giving these promises, and they were like, whenever they were really serious, they would say, oh, I swear by my head that I'm going to do this. And then if you go further back in time, you look into like the times of David and even beyond that, they would swear, they'd make an oath by their beard. Their beards were so valuable that they would actually, it was just a different day and time. And in certain times, a man's beard represented his manlyhood. If you look at the story of King David, one time he sent his men out to negotiate a deal on his behalf, and instead of negotiating a deal, instead of accepting the terms of the deal, they sent those men back naked and shaven, and one was just as shameful as the other. They had their rear ends were uncovered. All right, and you think, oh, that's how embarrassing, but equally embarrassing was they were clean shaven. And that was just as shameful because how important a beard was. So in those certain times, they would actually make an oath by their beard. It's like, this is how serious I am about this. And so what Jesus was telling them in this time, he says, look, stop swearing by your head. Stop making all these big oaths. He says, just let your yes be yes and your no be no. Let people know they can count on your word regardless of you having to put up collateral for it, right? And so just let people know that when you say yes, you mean yes, and they can count on you. You're going to follow through. And that's certainly what we want to do as Christians. We want people to know they can count on us. When we say we're going to be there, we're going to do something, that we're not someone, now every once in a while something comes up and something unforeseen happens, and that's okay and that's forgivable. But when it's time and time again that we're going back on our words, we're having to backtrack, that's not a good thing. That's not becoming of a Christian, and we don't want people to think they can't count on our words. And so here's a list of questions that I ask myself. Number one, is it prudent for me to say yes to these things? Number two, is it possible? And then number three, what would it take for it to become possible? And so look at number one, is it prudent? Can I do this? Is this a good use of my time? Is this helping me to fulfill my God mission? Is this bringing me closer to the goals that God's leading me towards, or is this pulling me away from it? Is this setting me back? So is it prudent? Is this going to bless others? Is it going to bless me? Is this a prudent thing to do? Should I do this or not? Because sometimes the person asking you to do it, they didn't ask too many questions. You might be the first person they ran into, and they didn't thoroughly think about it. And so it's good to think about it. Give some thought. Say, should I say yes to this? Because everything we say yes to means we have to say no to something else, right? We only have so much time in a day. And so ask yourself that question. Is it prudent? Is it prudent? Then the next thing, is it possible? Can I even do this? Am I capable of this? Do I have the education to do this? Am I competent in this area? Can I do it or not? And sometimes the answer will be no for that. And then finally, if it is no, what would it take for it to be possible? Because sometimes we can say no to things that, if we look and say, man, this really would be a good thing to do if I knew how to do it. And so maybe you can stretch yourself. Maybe you can go and watch a YouTube video or get some type of education in the time you have left, and you can make it possible. And so sometimes you might want to stretch yourself and grow, and the Lord will send opportunities like that in our life where we can get better. Maybe it's not possible now, but I can get ready in time. And so you look for that reason to say yes. But then look, sometimes it's just going to be no. It's like, no, it's not possible. It's not prudent. I'm not going to be able to make it possible in time. Whatever the case may be, no is an okay answer sometimes. And look, he said, let your yes be yes and your no be no. And so sometimes there is going to be some no's. Sometimes we do have to say, look, I'm sorry. It's not possible for me at this time. Now, listen, no can be a complete sentence. You could just say no, or you can help them out and say, look, I'm not the person for this, but I know Charlie over here. Charlie would be excellent at that. If you like, I can even speak to Charlie and tell him about it and point him in your direction. And so you can help them out by showing them, a better candidate for that opportunity.